Man, I was hating my life. I was just like all stressed out. And it was like, there's got to be something better.
Before you went down the memory care mansion road, you had a whole other life.
I want to do one deal a year that's a multi-million-dollar year that I can just build wealth. I don't know any other real estate play that puts off the margins, the cash flow that this does, and to be able to offer an amazing win.
What has been your process to attract the right type of staff and then also retain them?
You hire average, normal people, and you build and invest into them.
Can you go over some of the key things that you measure to decide whether the business is healthy or needs attention?
Yeah, I look at these numbers every single week, and
Welcome back to the Hybrid Real Estate Professional Podcast, the show where we explore how to build a life of abundance and purpose through real estate and small business investing. Today's guest is someone who's played a pivotal role in Andrea and my personal journey into residential assisted living, Brett Chotkevys. Brett is the founder of Platinum Resorts Assisted Living, a boutique-style residential care brand that has earned a reputation for blending hospitality, luxury, and heart. His approach is thoughtful, high-touch, and grounded in real operational excellence. He's also been a mentor, sounding board, and strategic partner for Andrea and I as we build Everwood Reserve. There's a reason people fly from all over the country to shadow Brett's operations, and it's not just because of the cash flow, it's because he's elevating the industry as a whole. In this episode, we're going to dig into what it really takes to build a sustainable, resident-first residential assisted living business, the mindset shifts needed to operate at a high level, and the philosophies that have shaped Brett's approach to care and scale. Brett, welcome to the show.
hey, thanks, Aaron. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here with you.
Yeah. So before we partnered up together, I was also a longtime listener to your show and have kind of watched your story come together. I would love to roll back the clock. A lot of people know you at this point for what you're doing now, but before you went down the memory care mansion road, you had a whole other life. So I'd love to start at the top and talk about how you got into real estate and business in the first place.
I think, like so many people, started my wife and I, married young, going through college, broke as a joke. We were waiting tables at night, had multiple jobs. I was in paramedic school trying to be a firefighter because I was told by my parents, get a job with a pension, right? That's the way to the early retirement, and that's how to hack the system. And man, I was hating my life. Laura was hating her life. You know, she was crying every day before she would go to work. I was like all stressed out. And it was like, there's got to be something better, right? And around that time, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad for the first time. And it was like, oh my gosh, there is a different way to this game, right? Like I'm playing the wrong game. And so we ended up getting into real estate. I love real estate, flipped 200 plus houses, have a bunch of rentals. And we were living in California at the time. So nothing to do with assisted living. We essentially just fumbled through trying to become an entrepreneur. Literally had our first baby, actually might have been our second daughter, went on maternity leave and just quit all of our jobs. And we listed our house for sale and it was like, all right, we are going to figure this out. And so we had probably 6 months worth of money in the bank after selling our house. All right, we're going to make this work. And man, we had this guy who said he was going to be our mentor. He was a neighbor who was a realtor who did some flips on the side. And with that in mind, we trusted him, quit our jobs, listed our house with him, and then realized he didn't know crap about what he was talking about. He didn't know deal structure, deal analysis, anything. He was telling us to buy these terrible things. And so, all right, well, we already sold our house and, did all this stuff. We need to figure this out. So we just jumped full right into it and hired a coach. We got our first flip within maybe 2-3 months, which I think was relatively pretty great. But we just screwed it up over and over again until we got our first deal. And then after that, we just kept screwing it up and over again until we screwed up even less and got our second deal. And that was kind of our pattern. We built a team and we were flipping 35 to 50 houses a year. We ran 2 construction companies and had inside sales and outside sales and construction manager, project manager, all that kind of stuff. And did that in Central California for 8 or so years and was making great money and was saving some of the properties we liked and keeping those as rentals. And so, on paper, doing great, but really just pulling our hair out, man. So many young, small real estate professionals that are like, oh my gosh, like deals blowing up all the time, horrible tenants all the time. And We were making great money and had potentially our retirement already covered, right? We had a lot of cash flow, which was great. But it was like, dude, there's got to be something more than this. And just kept waiting for the right opportunity. We wanted really just like a big deal, something that I could do. Remember telling Laura, like, I want to do one deal a year that's a multi-million-dollar year that I can just build wealth. I've always been drawn to doing something that is significant and made a difference. I love this game, the game of money and real estate and doing something that helps people. And so I was just like sitting on the sidelines trying to figure out what is it. We tried all sorts of different things. We got into seller finance stuff. We got into mobile homes. We started doing group homes. We were wholesaling. We were doing rent to own stuff, all these different niches. I'd heard about residential assisted living. And I'm like, I just don't see it, man. I took some training on it. I saw the numbers and I'm like, I think these numbers just don't make sense. And so we kind of just left it there on the sideline. Laura and I actually got into group homes. We had a few rental properties in California and we were like, hey, we want to help people. We got real estate stuff here. Let's use some of these things to help people. And we did this for maybe about 2 years. We had a live-in manager. We had a bunch of gentlemen who were off and on the street and we would house them and feed them. And we talk about growing yourself and your resume and all the different things, right? And really thought, man, this is awesome, right? We're making a difference. We're helping people and we're making money. We're building wealth through the real estate. And we're like, can we scale this? And there was this one day where there was a gentleman there. And again, people were addicts and they were struggling, right? And they were trying to get clean, but sometimes weren't. And the guy was just totally on it. The manager calls me, the fire department came, the building's full of smoke and there's like his dresser's on fire and he's sitting there just totally tweaked out, just like 1 foot from the fire and just doesn't even know the building's on fire. And I was like, I'm done with this. I got to sell this stuff. We got to be done with this kind of stuff. And so that was kind of the last straw for me on that. But it did become kind of a stepping stone between the real estate space into how do I build something that takes care of people, creates cash flow, and makes a difference. That kind of led us to this in-between space of, all right, we really love this. We want to build things. We want to make a difference. But perhaps we shouldn't be in the group home, sober living kind of space. We should look at seniors. So the timing worked out well because my grandma was 94. And it's like, all right, well, let's build something for grandma. So that's kind of how we led up to this place.
I appreciate you backtracking on and retracing that because if people look you up now, you have a very clear message about not only residential assisted living, but this very specific business model that you're teaching and partnering with others on and that you're partnering with us on, which is the memory care mansion, the 16 bedroom, 16 private bathroom, luxury style assisted living. But in retracing that, right, it's like you came to that opinion over a lot of trial and error, trying out different strategies, figuring out financially what works well, and also compatibility wise, like from an investor standpoint, does it align with the values that you have? And what you've identified now is something that fires on all cylinders, right? It has the impact that you want to make, and it also has the financial opportunity and upside to provide anything you could ever need. Instead of doing 30 flips in a year, you could do one mega deal that contributes to solving a really big problem in society, which is this shortage of beds for senior care, especially memory care. But you can also achieve your financial goals and in many cases bring investors along for the ride too that want exposure to this industry. So it's a really well-formed, like it was probably a long road to get there with a lot of trial and error. But now it's not like you just were born one day and you're like, I'm going to build a memory care mansion. It's founded on a ton of different experience and perspective that now you can say very credibly that this is the best strategy that you found after trying a bunch of different stuff.
And to add to that, I always felt like I was going against the current when I was doing the flips and the wholesaling and all those things. The market was just shifting and competition was getting harder and harder. And, for everyone in the game now, right? Like it is so much harder than it was 10 years ago. And there's very little deals, whether you're in multifamily or flipping or wholesaling. It's just tough. And that feeling, I don't have that feeling in the senior living space because I'm actually going with the current here. There's the wave of baby boomers that are coming and there's so much demand. And the products that are out there, honestly, our competition is laughable. When you go and you start touring these, if you're looking for your own family, pretty much everyone knows there are not great options. They are average or crap. And everyone has this personal experience with it. So when we share, here's what we do, they're like, oh my gosh, that is so needed, right? So there's so many people who want to get involved because everyone has a personal experience with end of life and grandma or mom.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we talk about these places that have kind of substandard quality of care, or maybe even just the approach. So we did a lot of secret shopping as part of our process, and we call around, and we were surprised how when someone answers the phone, most of the time they're not even asking, tell me about your loved one. What do they like to do? What's their name? Very basic human connection that they could easily make with their potential customers. And instead they just start describing, yeah, we got X number of rooms and we shower X number of times per day and we have fresh ingredients. They just start describing these kind of features without actually really making the emotional connection. And where I'm going with this is that one of your guys' opinions and how you guys teach your partners is that the bar has been set very low for what people encounter out in the wild. And so our ability to exceed that with quality of care, the actual personalization, and just building a business where people could be proud to drop off their family member and not ashamed, like that is integral to your guys' process, your business model, your success so far, and how you teach others. What do you think are the biggest differentiating factors for especially a newer business operator who wants to come into this space? What are the big differentiators?
When Laura and I decided to do this, we were building our assisted living and we moved to Texas to build our first one. And again, no experience, right? Neither of us, we came from real estate and restaurants. And people would ask us, do you really think you're going to be successful? Do you think you can actually do this, right? Build something, get a license with the state, fill it up. And we're like, honestly, we were a little nervous. Laura was more nervous than I was. I'm going to figure it out no matter what. But I was so surprised. And I realized within probably 90 days of opening that we are going to crush this thing. And it's because of the options out there. They are so bad. Nobody cares. The competition, it's either really big, the big smelly facilities, or really small, the little 6-8 bed mom and pop runs. And most time around the country, you're just looking at the big 60, 80 beds. Those people there, they don't care. When you get in this industry and you realize how terrible people in this industry, the way they are treated, and therefore the culture that's in the industry, and therefore the people who will stay in that bad culture, it's people you don't want to hire and you don't want to work for you. And they are taking care of mom and they are doing all the things. And I always use this analogy. It's you don't have to run faster than the bear when he's chasing you. You just have to run faster than the person next to you, right? And you can come in and as long as you honestly have heart, you have a gorgeous building and you have heart, you can make all the mistakes and just call the families and let them know, hey, this is on me, my bad. This is how we're taking care of mom. They are so gracious because by the time they come to us, they've usually been through the funnel of independent living into the assisted living at the nasty big box and then coming to us and burned out and there's no communication. When you can come in and say, hey, this is me, it's myself, my wife, it's our team here. We're here to make a difference and love on your mom or your dad. Like there is so much grace for that kind of stuff. And honestly, you just have to give a crap. It's all this. Here's how to be a great caregiver is just how to be a great mom, right? It's just a lot of patience and you're just helping people. And that's really the gist of it.
Yeah, you've impressed upon us and the other partners that we've been able to meet quite a few times that this really is a people business. Yes, of course, there are medical standards. You need to make sure you have access to the right services, contracts with the right type of healthcare services. You got to have a full staff and kitchen. Like there's a lot of bases to cover, but at the end of the day, the ability to attract new people to come and move in is directly correlated to your ability to make connections out in the community. And I feel like, especially you guys came into a city, it's not where you were born and raised. You weren't born and raised in Georgetown, but you came in there, you're adding very tangible value to the community by providing the service. And then you're also integrating yourselves. You guys have a really cool marketing strategy, which I hope you don't mind me at least alluding to, right? Which is your strategic 20, where you basically have 4 different domains of how to attract residents. There's paid referral services within the healthcare industry. Then there's relationships with people in the healthcare industry that are unpaid. Those are just about your relationship. And then layering for non-healthcare related, right? You have paid sponsorship of community events, and then you just have your organic local relationship within the community. And that's a really nice holistic approach, whereas a lot of people assume that you're kind of just getting people maybe off insurance, or they're only coming in at a really acute time of need. But in fact, you can kind of plant the seed and make people aware of your home long before they need it. I mean, can you maybe unwrap that strategy a little bit and how that's worked so well for you guys?
Absolutely. So when we first opened during COVID, and we're under construction during 2019, and even while we were under construction, we started implementing some of this. And we had like 12 of the 15 rooms that we had sold deposits while under construction, right? And I think we were full within 6 weeks after that, and had a wait list of like 20 people after 6 months after opening. And so here's why. First, I would go back to the competition. People don't want the other types of products. They don't want the too big, smelly facility. They don't want the too small mom and pop run that can't offer the private chef and the private room and all of those things. So if you design your product the way that we are with the memory care mansions, it's everything that mom really wants and needs. But then we took the physical product, and then even though we didn't have a reputation, right? Reputation's so important, but you can do this when you're brand new, because we've done it and a lot of people that we work with do. You start honestly with heart. This is what the name of the game is. We're just providing love. That is what the service we are selling. So you just go and you talk to these people, and there is a logical path that you alluded to there. You start with paid people in the industry, because everyone that is going to accept $3,000-$5,000+ for a referral fee, they want to meet you. They're happy to come tour your building, whether you're under contract or you're building new construction. They're happy to spend some time, and you just go and you sell them. Here is me. I am not perfect. I may have experience. I may not have experience, but I'm here to love and take care of these seniors. And we're going to hire the best staff, and we're going to do this and that, right? And those people are pretty much how you get started. You start with people who this is their business to know the right people in the industry, because you don't necessarily know them yet. So you can definitely pay. And I think that is a good starting place as you are getting deposits and bed holds and things. But the most important part is what that leads to next is the people who are in the industry who you don't have to pay. Because this is probably 90% of the relationships and the referrals that we get is all the people in this little niche. And it's a really tight knit community in your county, your city, all those things. It's home health, it's hospice, it's the managers of the independent living, it's the rehab people. There's a whole list of these. There's dentists that their whole business model is traveling dentists. They go from assisted living to assisted living. Same with podiatrists, same with so many different people. And so what these people do, they literally go from, mom's house at home, if she's on hospice or those kind of things, people living in their private houses, to independent livings, taking care of those people, to the assisted livings, to the memory cares. They know every facility in your area. They know what are the best ones, which ones are the worst ones. And every single week, they're meeting with the daughter, the son, the power of attorney, and saying, here's what's going on with mom. Mom has declined. She now needs a new care plan. Maybe it's time to move her. Maybe it's time for her to go into memory care, something like that. And it's, well, don't go over these ones. I've been there every day and I know that they're crap. This one over here, this is the best. And it's almost like Yelp for restaurants, right? Like, you want Mexican, you look it up and, well, this one's got 4.5 stars. Everyone goes there. The same thing. Everyone knows who has the best care, the best reputation. And so we get crazy amounts of calls and leads where most of the big facilities are like 65% full in our market. And it's just like, because everyone wants to go to the same spot, right? It's kind of common sense. So if you build those relationships, and it takes a little bit of time, right? Like, pay for speed. And then the slow, long play is you build the relationships with the people in the industry. And then the third play to that is there's 1% of people who live in your area are in the industry. The other 99% are just community members, right? So going and meeting the correct people. We've had such an amazing result with people in nonprofits, in people who are plugged in, connected in the city. There are so many like 60 to 70-year-old ladies that are retired and they just want to help, and they meet with all their girlfriends and they do wine events and raise money for things. Those people, if you have them come and do bingo and you meet with them, volunteer at their events, man, they are huge advocates for you, and they will send so many people your way.
Yeah, I feel like it's such an important thing, and it's maybe a little less obvious because a lot of people maybe have a narrow idea of where residents actually come from. But those community partnerships, especially over time, like you said, as you build your reputation, they become equally, if not more important than the paid referral pipelines. Like you said, that's also how you could get a head start, even as a new operator. So Andrea, my wife, she spends a lot of time driving out to Tomball, the area where we're going to be building our mansions. And she's meeting with various members of the community, both within and outside of the healthcare field. And we're still probably, as we record this, 12 months away from opening. But it's, to your point, not too early to have those conversations. People are taking an interest, even though we haven't broken ground yet. They know it's coming. They know it's in the pipeline. And these folks do want to be aware of that and contribute in whatever way they can. So we kind of talked about filling the beds, so work our way down the P&L a little bit. So obviously the whole business is predicated on being able to generate enough revenue to hire the right type of staff, make sure you're investing, paying competitively, attracting the right type of people, retaining them. So the next kind of big cost center is the payroll and the staffing, which from everything I've heard, both from our own individual concerns and then concerns we hear from other investors, staffing is the biggest thing that people are worried about. So what has been your process to attract the right type of staff and then also retain them in a competitive and pretty difficult industry?
Yeah. So by far, staffing is the biggest challenge to this business. A lot of people who are new think it might be how to get the residents. It's super easy to get the residents if you have the best product. And as you build your best reputation, it's just not a consideration. The bigger problem to solve and scale for is keeping and creating really great staff, right? Like you don't just hire great staff, you hire average, normal people and you build and invest into them. And they have to believe in you and your company and their back, and they will give you their back. And so I really think it starts with the top down. It starts with the ownership team. And is honestly a lot of time in setting the stage with, here's our vision, here's what's going on with us as the company and why we're here trying to make a difference. And really investing that and teaching that vision to your management, but then also supplementing that with a lot of the practical stuff. And it just goes kind of step by step, month by month. Let's just one thing at a time pour into and teach and equip our management team so that they can turn around and go teach our caregivers and our chef and our med techs. And the other part of it is kind of a little bit more defensive. Like it's firing quickly. We fire very quickly. We had our management meeting today and it was like, here are the two ladies that are such and such is happening. Like, are we going to cut them? When are we going to cut them? What are the write-ups? And you know, it is for the best of your grandmas. That is always the bottom line that we were thinking of, right? Like what provides the best care for our grandparents. And a lot of that goes back to the staffing. And a lot of times it goes back to, are we paying enough, right? Do we need to pay more for the point of we are taking care of our grandparents the best? And so it's a little bit of A/B testing as you're going through, hey, you will actually hit a different caliber of person when you hit a certain dollar amount. And if you just need to maybe pay $2, $3 more, you'll get some quality people that will come in. And you don't need, they don't have to have a degree. They don't have to be a nurse. They don't technically, even here in Texas, they don't have to be a CNA. All you have to be is 18 and have a heart, right? So that's who we're trying to find. You actually think that most of the time, the best caregivers that we have are people without experience and they just care. It's just a lot of patience. It's just a lot of empathy. And they're going to get, it's a hard job, right? Not challenging academically or anything like that, but just to have that constant patience is tough. And so you need someone who's built for that. And you don't know. When you first start those first few months, don't be afraid to hire, move people out quickly, and just cycle through and develop a great training system because you're filtering through for those right people who are not going to sit there on their phone on TikTok all day while grandma has a dirty brief, right? You need someone who has compassion and empathy and it's like, all right, let's go take you to the restroom and let's help with these things. And it's not easy and it's a thankless job a lot of times because there's so many little things that they're doing constantly.
Yeah. And I think I would relate it back too to what we were talking about with standing out in marketing. There's also a really low bar for how these caretakers are treated at other big facilities, right? So they're used to people, maybe the micromanaging, unhappy manager types breathing down their neck. And maybe they have this inherent built-in resentment that whoever their new employer is going to be the same way. So when you guys talk about creating a culture where not only are you trying to find people that you can develop, but you're creating a sense of culture, right? You guys call them your angels. So a specific brand, you empower them with this personality that you can have that angelic effect on grandma or grandpa's life. And So it's ingrained, it's kind of a living, breathing culture instead of just a job that you go clock into and clock out of. And to me, that does stand apart in a crowded field where most of these jobs are not only systemically thankless, but usually probably actually thankless in the big facility environment where you're providing an alternative. So it's another example of just like raising the bar where the bar is also really, really low to begin with.
Absolutely. Most of the time when we hire someone from big corporate, there'll be one of them to 16, sometimes 20 residents that they have to take care of. And it's just literally not possible to go through shower and toilet and help people. Not possible. They're just kind of half the time being neglected. And so they'll come and you're like, wait, I only have to take care of these 8 and I have my own private chef over here who's going to cook for them and clean and do all the dishes and all that kind of stuff. All I got to do is take care of 8 grandmas, and we just focus on quality and not quantity. And so when you have the right person in there, they'll come in, even if they have experience somewhere else, and be like, oh, this is a cakewalk. I can do this all day. And so just really finding that person with heart, with or without experience, you can honestly train them.
I love that approach. Today's episode is brought to you by the Remote Real Estate Academy, the community I launched last year where I personally coach investors and empower them to buy rental properties anywhere in the United States. My business partner Nathan and I have a collective 15 years experience with over 20 cash flowing out-of-state rental properties. We provide a step-by-step playbook on how you can build your own portfolio and start accessing the life-changing benefits of real estate investing starting today. Go to remoterealestateacademy.com for more info, or better yet, shoot me an email at aaron@aaronamin.com with subject line RREA, and I'll throw in a special bonus for podcast listeners who join the Academy. Now let's get to the show. And so last piece on the operational component, and then there's a couple other domains I want to hit. But you are a very data-driven person in addition. So you have the big vision that comes straight from the heart, but then you also have a very systematic way of managing your business. So you measure different KPIs, both like broader business health metrics, but also individual like activity metrics for your staff, like number of tours booked and number of new residents added to the wait list. Can you go over some of the key things that you measure to decide whether the business is healthy or needs attention?
Yeah, I look at these numbers every single week, and I can look at just this. It takes me like 30 seconds and know exactly how well my business is doing. There's been times we're out of the country for weeks at a time. I know everything's going normal. I don't have to hear anything from my managers. Here's the numbers. I think of it as I'm deciding, and if someone is deciding, how do I go about what do I want to track? I really start at the beginning and just work my way number by number all the way through the business. I alluded to, really the sales part of it, right? It starts with the income. How many new leads are we getting every single week? And we are tracking that. And then from there, right, the lead becomes a tour. How many new tours are we doing? And we're great at tours, and we have a wait list. So how many people are we adding to the wait list, right? So we're tracked that every single week. And then from there, right, people do pass away. So how many beds do we have full? And I can actually go and see it. When someone does pass away, okay, how many weeks is it before we replace that bed? And it's usually about 2 weeks, and we'll have somebody new in that bed, right? So I'm tracking all of those kind of things moving through on the income side, and then pushing forward into the operations side. And we'll track potential issues, resident issues. We'll track staffing issues. I want to know how many call outs that we're having. And then actually another issue that we track is how many out of office or kind of nighttime calls are we getting? And that may be an indication for our overnight shift, right? What does our training look like? How is our staff there? If they are calling, and they do, if they're calling our management team 3-5 times a night, like that will affect how my managers are performing. And it may be, is it because somebody is actively passing away, or did somebody fall at night, or how have we not equipped them to know how to handle these things? So really, that was a personal problem that we saw in our business. And so anything that's a problem, right? Let's track it. Let's put a metric to this. And so that's really the flow going through these things. We'll track our payroll every single week. We'll track our food kind of more on the monthly lesson. So I'll get into all of these numbers with my bookkeeper every month, and she puts everything into categories, and I can see month by month, here's all of my expenses and how well are we doing in those things as well.
Yeah, so it's not just profitability and cost control, it's also like effectiveness. Like you mentioned, if people are having issues outside of hours, that can trickle down into how your managers, they're getting pinged all night, not getting good sleep, and maybe they're getting distracted by stuff that could be trained and prevented in the future. And that trickles down into how they do the rest of their job, which can then eventually hurt the profitability or, more importantly, the quality of care for the seniors. And so, yeah, you've kind of got these different dimensions where some of them are strictly financial and the others are more about just the actual health of the business and the people in the business. So I do appreciate that kind of holistic approach. And it's one of those things where people that are considering getting into assisted living, they hear about it on maybe a Bigger Pockets article, or it's the fad of the day, right? People are looking for cash flow and they think about assisted living, but all the things that go into it and doing it well and making sure that you're not one of those people that sets the bar really low, but you actually clear it and provide excellent service. There's a lot that goes into it. So I think that's something to consider for folks who are intrigued by the idea, but maybe don't have the bandwidth or capacity to take something on with this much complexity and stakes that high. So the next domain I want to touch on, which is probably another big one that stops a lot of people from getting started, is the construction, finding land. This is the piece where you work with partners all across the country. It's probably the hardest piece, if I had to guess, at least as far as getting into the game, is finding a viable piece of land and making sure that it can be built on, that you can navigate all the various regulations and zoning it may be. So I know you mentioned you did 200 plus flips. You're very familiar with construction heading into this, but what are some of the big, and I know you have plenty of episodes talking about this, but maybe just even at the highest level, what are the biggest considerations when people are looking for land for a project like this?
I think there's a lot of misinformation out there about this kind of thing, of how easy it is to go and do this kind of stuff, that you can take any normal house and do it, or you can find vacant land and build this and it's no big deal. And it's very much a big deal, and it's very much difficult, and there's a lot of different things to consider. And so first and foremost, I would say zoning is one of the biggest challenges right up front, right? A lot of people are told you can go and take the house you live in, take any 5-6 bedroom house, convert the garage, and you can do it, right? That's probably 95% of the time not true based on your city, right? Like, they think that an assisted living is a business, and business is zoned commercial, and they want to put you in a commercial space. And so, right, like, majority of the time you can't do anything that's really profitable. Almost every city will let you do it at some level, right? Is it 4? Is it 6? Is it 8? Is it 10? But you're not going to make any money. You'll probably lose money and not provide great care with those kind of income and expenses. So to do something viable, we build these 16-bed mansions. Usually 95% of the time, it's not residential zoned. There's a couple of cities that I've seen that allow it, but most of the time you're either looking at commercial, or is it R4, or is it mixed use land? Can you get a variance? We've done agricultural land and jumped through a few hoops with the city to be able to do that. And so I think zoning is the biggest challenge on the front side. And it kind of is this cost balance, right? Because you start looking at commercial land and you want to compare it to residential land, and it might be 3 times the cost, right? So then it's like this sticker shock of, I can't pay $1 million+ for this piece of land and then build it, right? But you just have to find this balance of, the city says, okay, yeah, commercial, you can do that. What are my secondary options, right? What are the variants or the special use permits that, like, agricultural land for us was literally 25% of the price of the commercial land a couple miles down the road. So there's a really important consideration there. ADA is another really big determining factor in this. If you are building new construction, you have to build compliant. You have to be ADA. Now, if you're doing a home conversion and stuff like that, there are kind of exceptions to that. You don't have to make everything compliant. But man, it is difficult to make sure you can hit some of these codes. And it is different state by state by state. There are different restrictions on bedroom sizes and ratios of square footage for the dining room and the living room, and roll-in showers and all the different things, parking for compliance. And if you follow these rules, you'll end up with the most ugly hospital-like facility, right? And it's like, but I don't want that. I want this awesome, gorgeous mansion. So how do you take the rules and how do you flip it and make it, purpose-built and gorgeous in order so that you can have something special take care of grandmas? I think that's actually one of the big challenges up front that combine the design with hitting these compliance things for ADA.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's anybody who is even remotely considering this that listen to that might be like, okay, never mind. But it can be navigated, right? Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of knowing what to do and in what order to do it. And I think one of the biggest revelations that Andrea and I had was that a lot of this due diligence and the stuff that you're talking about that you would need to figure out can be figured out before you even go under contract. And even when you're under contract, typically you have these long due diligence periods. You're going to have costs, right? You're probably going to be working with the architect, engineer, a number of professionals that are going to charge for their services. So it's not like you can figure everything out completely for free. But we were surprised just how much you could figure out before you start putting money down. And it's different if you're like me, you came from a rental property background, you did flips. The way we analyze deals for residential, completely different. There's so many more variables and so many more dimensions and things that could kill the deal on a raw land development, ground up construction deal. It's just knowing what to look for. So I think that was when we started working with you, one of the immediate benefits was that you've done this before, not only for yourselves, but with other people. And so you had a very sequential checklist. And I think I've told you this privately, but in here for everyone to hear, right? It's like the high standard that you hold for the land. Like, if a partner brings something to you that might work, but they're forcing it and maybe it could work under the best circumstances, but it's not ideal. Like you hold a pretty high standard for what you will sign off on. And that's one of the biggest things that you can save people from making a mistake is like getting the wrong piece of land or finding out down the road that they made a mistake and that their original plan isn't going to work the way it was originally intended. So I think it's a solvable problem. When we hear people talk about it, it's kind of daunting, but it's definitely solvable if you just know what to look for. So that brings, go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say, anything that's this good is not going to be easy, right? And it's just cost versus reward here. And I mean, you can build serious wealth on this and have amazing cash flow, but I mean, you're doing something that has a purpose and makes a difference. And it's not a small deal that we do.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I think we hit on two of the three biggest concerns people have, whether they're trying to go after the deal themselves or invest in it, which is the staffing and the construction. But then the funding is the third one, I think, that's both fun and not fun to discuss. But you got between the bank piece and then most likely due to the size of these deals, you have to raise some level of outside capital. So can you talk about like what are the most common funding options if somebody were to do the memory care management model?
Yeah. I wish I had known this. I wish somebody would have told me this like 5 years ago. On our first one that we did, we raised all private capital for it. And it was over $1 million. And I did not know that SBA funding, how well it worked for this model. So this is what I do now personally, and most of our teams do, whether it's a 7A or a 504. And SBA is awesome for this because we have two things. We literally have a real estate company, right? We have LLC for that. And we have another LLC for the operations. There's a business and real estate. And most banks will just fund the business part of this and not fund the operations. And there's a lot of capital, several $100,000 of working capital and furniture. And then you add an interest reserve and stuff like that. You might get up to an extra $500,000 that you need. And to have that in cash is a little bit daunting, and it makes the deal very unachievable for most people if you need the down payment for the real estate plus $500,000. So SBA is awesome because they will fund both sides of this. You'll actually sign loan docs, managing member real estate company, managing member operations company, and you can get all of this capital funded bubble by bubble, so to speak, of like, here's my construction overage, here's my working capital, here's my furniture, and you can pull it a little at a time as you need these different funds. And so SBA, they can do 90% leverage. For me, they did 85. So usually 80 to 90% down is what the loan will be. So 10 to 20% down. And that can be a lot more achievable for people who are doing a single mansion, not building out a neighborhood like we are. You might be 350 to 500,000, right? Or you go and you build a neighborhood, which might be in multiple phases and is really a massive play. You might be $1 million or a little bit more than that you need to raise. But it really becomes achievable because of the deal structure. Can bring on investors for these things, especially if you're just going to build one. It's not a huge thing to go and raise $300,000-$400,000 from one or two investors. And really, if you're a real estate guy, you're looking at just the real estate play and the cash flow from that. But we have an active business, and the active business makes amazing money. And so you're really kind of double dipping on what you can offer to potential investors and make these awesome deal structures for them. because the cash flow is huge, right? And then you have this back end play, whether it's 5 or 7 or 10 years down the road, where you're going to exit the deal. And again, we're building new construction so we can build them at less than future value. And so you have this huge win on the backside too, right? Plus all the depreciation and stuff. I don't know any other real estate play that puts off the margins, the cash flow that this does, and to be able to offer an amazing win. And honestly, you can, because you have the two different entities, you can actually structure, a more personalized win-win, because you don't have to say, oh, here's 10% and 10%, right? You could say, oh, okay, here's 15% and 5% or vice versa. And you can problem solve, hey, here's what I need for the GP side, here's what we need for the LP side, and we can make something, a great win-win on this. And so I think the SBA is awesome and massive for this stuff. And you couple that with some investor capital, and I would say that most people can do this deal. It becomes super achievable to do a $3-4 million deal on your first one. Even, we have school teachers that are doing it, right? Like, we're not talking about crazy millionaire people, right? People who financially have their stuff together. They got a good credit, no bankruptcies, you got good solid W-2 income, just normal people, right? Those people can get into this deal and be able to do these.
Yeah, no, that was a really good overview. I think that from the bank's perspective, one of the concerns I hear most people say is, well, as a first-time operator, let's say I am a school teacher, I've got the heart, I've studied the business plan, I'm working with Brett and Laura, like, how am I actually getting approved for this loan?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think from the experience side, there's two parts that banks tell me that they look at when they look at our partner stuff. Is they want to know what your personal experience, and that's you and your finances, right? So you got to pass the check of, hey, what do we look like on paper? Are we paying our bills on time? All of that kind of stuff. It's very helpful if you have rental properties, some other type of assets, those kind of things, other type of cash flow. And then they want to know, what does your experience look like, right? You're the one who's, the deal really revolves around you, right? The success or failure of the deal will be on the principal who's there day in, day out, taking care of the grandmas and really overseeing the staff. You don't necessarily have to have assisted living experience, right? You don't necessarily have to be a nurse. That would be great if you did. You don't have to be a real estate investor or a business person, but there's experiences on both sides that are applicable. And we have a handful of banks that we work with, and we have one bank that values people who have medical experience. We have another bank that values people who have business experience, totally separate than medical, right? And there's, honestly, you need both skills. I think that business experience is better. You can definitely just go hire someone with a medical experience. You will need to do that anyways, right? And was maybe because it was my path, right? I knew a lot of business stuff, managed teams. I'm great with numbers, but I didn't know anything about medical. And so we just brought someone on, our first manager. And so they'll look at those kind of things. But sometimes it's just not enough, right? Especially if you're doing a several $1 million deal. How do you convince the bank to do these things, right? And that's kind of why we're working together and why we partner with teams, is we have this plug and play model. And I'd say there's 3 core foundations to what we do, right? There's the real estate play, and you literally just go and plug and play. Here's our mansions. Here's all our architecturals. Build it exactly. You can modify if you like. This is what it looks like, right? You have our construction manager to help guide you and your builder and your architect through the whole thing. Same with our funding. Here's our banks. You can use the same kind of banks and preferred lenders. And then we have a marketing team, a digital marketing team, and then a referral networking side of our marketing team that goes into touring and sales and literally sending out your people to our mansions and teaching them, especially your future managers, how do I tour? How do I make sales? How do I answer the phone call? How do I copy and paste your CRM and your lead system? Marketing is so vastly important. And then same with the operations team. How do you onboard and train? And your success honestly comes back to how great are your people. So having a plug and play system for that, and then having, when things get hard, being able to just reach out on the phone or jump on a call with our direct managers, manager to manager. How do we do this? I'm not seeing it, right? The flow is not right. And then coming out to our mansions here, being able to train and send your team. And so there's a lot of value that we bring, and we built our company for this, really for the success of, what is the bank looking for? What is our partners needing to be successful? The deal structure is that we only win when our partners win. So how do we make it so that they have everything that they need to be successful?
Yeah, absolutely. And as someone who recently navigated the bank approval process, I could say they definitely do want that level of granularity. What timeline is all this stuff happening on? How are you training your staff? How are you building relationships in the community? How are you handling construction? Who is responsible for keeping everything on track and cost controls, et cetera. And so, yeah, that's something where your team, you have this timeline view from the second somebody enters your ecosystem until the day they're open for business and beyond even. But there's multiple tracks running at the same time sometimes. Like you're doing construction related work while you're also laying the foundation for your operations business and building community relationships. And again, it boils back to that step by step. What is your business plan? What order is stuff happening in? And how are you making sure all of these complex bases are covered? And not only covered one time, but covered on an ongoing basis. So definitely appreciate the structure you provided for us. Who would you say is the ideal person, or maybe couple, if someone's doing it as a couple? What's your ideal profile for someone who would really succeed with this business model?
I see quickest and fastest success with teams. It doesn't have to be a wife, but I do see a lot of success with husband-wife teams. Sometimes one of them has medical background, sometimes one of them has business, and that's fantastic. They'll just take off. I have one team that one of them is the medical director experience and one of them is actually a builder. And it's like, oh, you guys got this. Here are the systems, here are the steps, but it doesn't have to be the case. I think that people who ultimately want to make a difference for themselves personally, because there's a lot of grit and hard work that we're going to have to do, but also take that and pour into their business are people who become really successful with these kind of things. So I wouldn't limit it to say you have to have this or that. You should have some type of experience, either medical or business or maybe financial, something to be able to stand on. And then you're going to have to go and use systems or partner with somebody to fill in the other side that you're missing.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's partially the type of person you are, the personality you have, your commitment to your own growth and success and development, more so than the avatar or the profile you come in with, is what I heard at least. But
yeah, absolutely.
We're coming up on time here. I just share and highlight the work we're doing together in Tomball, Texas, northwest suburb of Houston. So we're about 10 months into our partnership with you, which is about how long it takes to do this the right way, at least from what we see. We went under contract on this 7-acre plot of land at the end of January as we record it mid-June, and we're still a couple months out from closing. But it's been an extraordinary team effort to get to this point. We said no to about 5 or 6 plots of land before we said yes to this one. And even since we said yes, it's been another 4.5, 5 months of due diligence, getting all our builder quotes and everything in. But we've entered this really exciting phase where we're now raising capital for our deal. We're a few weeks into that, and then we're making a more public offering. By the time this episode drops, that will have occurred, and we'll have another 3 to 4 week window to bring on investors into this opportunity. And for all the reasons Brett mentioned earlier, there's a lot of meat on the bone, so to speak. These are very cash flow heavy deals. You create a lot of equity through the development play. We're building brand new luxury homes on a 7-acre plot of land that we rezoned from agriculture to commercial. So there really is a holistic play for our investors. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to take a moment to highlight some of the core features of that and also see if you had any commentary to add. Essentially, we're using the financing strategy that Brett talked about. So we have an SBA 504 loan, which will fund the ground up construction. They'll partner with the local bank and they can actually loan, in our case, it's about 73% of the total cost of the project. And we're raising the rest through either our own individual contributions or raising equity from outside investors. And the return profile we're aiming for is it'll be a 6-year hold. And our goal is to get all investor capital and actually double that by the end of the 6th year. And then we have a structure right now where we would hold people even past that point that we've returned their capital through the end of year 10 with the goal of getting them a 20% or greater return on their money on a time value basis, so internal rate of return. So we've engineered it to be 20% is, at least in our experience, significantly higher than you can get in the average on a stock market or other type of equities. And then it's also being preserved and backed by this real estate equity play. But I'm just curious if you have any other thoughts, things that you would want to highlight about our deal, or particularly what you know about the process so far.
Yeah, I would highlight just the opportunity that you have there, the land, the timing that you have, place that you're in, the spot that you have, right? Like there's all these other medical things going in. It's an amazing spot. You're going to get so many eyes on it and demand in that area. There's so many people moving to that area. And it's just, you have this just huge opportunity for a ton of sales, a ton of great potential staff in that area. And I just highlight you and your wife, Andrea. You guys are awesome. You guys are rock stars. You're doing this for the right reasons, right? I know just on a personal level, the quality of people you are, and it's somebody that I'm happy to get behind, and I think a lot of people would.
No, we appreciate that, and the support from you and Laura and your entire team. Like you got a whole team there. Everyone's really dedicated to the cause and making sure we have all the tools we need. Like you said, there's marketing, operations, construction. Everyone's really invested in our success, both literally and figuratively. And that shows in the way that we're able to package this up and take it out and hopefully share the opportunity with other investors. So we will be hosting a webinar on Monday, June 30th at 6 p.m. Central. I'll make sure, so Brett will be there. Some of our other partners will be there. My wife, Andrea, will be there. And we're going to give an overview of the opportunity as well as answer any questions people have. So I'll make sure there's a RSVP link. And if you listen to this after June 30th, we'll make sure the replay's in there. But Brett, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. If people want to learn more about you, partnering with you, or any of your businesses, where can they find you?
I would first start with our podcast, right? Assisted Living Investing. You can find that at any podcast app, or you can check us out on YouTube. My podcast is on my YouTube channel. It's just my full name, Brett Chotkevys. Find us there. And yeah, I would start there. Our website is Assisted Living Mansion. You can see what we do and what our model's like, and check it out. There's a ton of free content and very actionable items that we have on there.
Awesome. Yeah, there are more free resources than you probably would realize. And you can learn a lot of the process we talked about today through the free course. And if you want to try it, before taking any further steps, highly recommend it. So we'll make sure all that's in the show notes. Thanks again, Brett, and we'll do it again soon.
All right. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you for making it to the end of today's episode. As you may know, podcasts are very difficult to grow organically. If you're getting value from today's episode, I'd deeply appreciate if you could take 30 seconds to leave my show a 5-star rating and review. This will go a long way to helping me reach more listeners just like you. Thank you so much in advance.